So happy Sunday, everyone. It's so glad to have you all here. I'm excited to be able to have this sort of initial conversation before we launch our interconnected justice series. I'm really glad to have the people that we have so far, and hopefully that the numbers grow from here, because it's going to be a great opportunity to get people looped into what justice can look like in the interfaith movement, and who better to be able to demonstrate that kind of work than the work of cooperation circles. So I'm really happy that you all were able to join. Um, if since all of you don't know each other, there's only three of you. um, it'd be great to hear like just who you are and why you wanted to join this conversation in particular, because I think it'd be helpful for others to be aware of like why you wanted to tap into the conversation and how it can help us take these conversations forward. So Katie, if you want to start.
Hi, I'm Katie Kennedy, and I'm with the Oracle Institute in Virginia. My title is actually Interfaith Coordinator, so I've been fascinated with the world's religions, but I'm also, if you can see my screen, the Peace Pentagon is one of our big projects, and so peace building and activism and social justice are a huge part of what we do. And we actually have an intentional community, and we have different paths, and my path is the path of the peacemaker. So, I've built a curriculum around justice and human rights. And so this is just right up my alley. It's everything I want to pour my heart and energy into.
Nice. Fantastic. Felipe, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Felipe. I am calling from Chile right now. I usually live in Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm part of the URI North American Leadership Council, but I also work for the Charter for Compassion, which is an organization truly based on the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated. And a lot of I think that as we develop more compassion for ourselves, for humanity, and for the earth, we realize that there needs to be a lot more action with our intentions. And so, yes, it's super nice to feel compassion and to feel this love for humanity and everything, but what are we going to do about it? And so as we apply compassion to our actions, we become agents of change. And so this conversation seems very appropriate for us people to apply this great feelings and thoughts and dreams and ideas and what we want for our society, but put them into actual solid plans so that we can create those changes that we want to see in our local communities. So it's like think global, but act local. So super stoked to be here.
Great, Felipe. Thank you so much. Krishna, I was just going to call upon you, but if you need to go do something.
my son just walked in the room. Yeah, you can have that. Go. So can you have a lollipop?
Sure.
I'm Krishna Naranamurthy. I know Tahil from USC. I'm a member of the Interfaith Council there. I'm a PhD student in creative writing and literature, and also doing a graduate certificate, like a minor in religious studies. Very interested, I think like Katie said, in the world's religions and interfaith work. I also do some freelance journalism. So one of the things that crosses multiple fields of like my academic study and my writing interests are telling stories of I don't know how politely to say this, but just like the non-right-wing version of religion, that is the religion that gets promoted more in the media, that you hear more about, including in progressive media, being very critical of religion because they only see religion as the way extremists have presented it. So I'm trying to tell the stories of people like you all who are doing like really good work in the community and showing religion in a positive way, or even including the work of secular humanists as well, who are still open-minded and supportive of people who have faith as well. So those are my interests.
Thanks so much, Krishna. I appreciate you. Vasu, bienvenidos. We'd love to hear from you.
Muchas gracias, Tahil. Hi, everyone. I'm Vasu Bandu from Mexico, but I live in the United States. And I work in the group, in the CC Fraternidad Interespiritual Fraternity from URI. And I'm happy to support these conversations. You have all my support. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Vasu. I appreciate you. And Artie, hello. We're just asking people to introduce themselves and share why they wanted to join this conversation. As soon as you unmute yourself, of course.
Just because he has to tell me how to use my computer every time I get on it. Jeez. I'm Artie Turner. I'm been with URI since '98, and I continue to support each and every person. For me, it's when you tell me how you feel, what you feel about your religion, then that enriches me and I become a better person. So I thank each one of you, and I want you to know that you are my family.
Thank you, Artie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So yes, so I want to be able to tap into, everyone's energy right now, because 2020 has been unprecedented without question. It's finally over, surprisingly, even though it might not feel that way going into the first month of 2021. We either can see it as the coattails of 2020, or if we don't do something about it, it can be what 2021 becomes too. So this conversation of doing interconnected justice as a workshop series came from the response of folks that participated on some visioning calls for URI to help our region in particular think about the programming that we want to offer in 2021. And with the particular emphasis on seeing where our cooperation circles or chapter organizations are being lifted, while at the same time getting others the information and resources they need about how to do the work of justice in their communities, this idea came to be. And the story is very simple. Over the next year, we're going to be working on workshops once a month that are going to introduce people to various topics or various themes of justice work that will help them really get inspired, but also teach them some tangible contextual things that they can take back to their community and actually do the work themselves. Because oftentimes when we create very dialogue open spaces, it's all about being able to know each other, building relationships, and those are important things. But I think, as Felipe was saying, moving towards this narrative of action is going to be very important going forward. We have to center ourselves in a space that says, it's good to know each other, it's good to have our allies and accomplices, but we have to work with each other too. And when it comes to solving the biggest problems on earth, we have to lean on each other in our communities to share that work. And it's going to take conversations like this to help really make sure we're catering it in a way for you all to benefit. Because I want all of you to attend all of the workshops, but I know commitment can be an issue sometimes, because it's not like all of you are not busy. You have your own schedules and things to do. So a couple of things that we're actually going to be doing as a complement to doing these workshops is, first and foremost, we'll be recording everything, so you'll always have access to it, and we'll be posting it on URI North America's YouTube page. But two, we're actually going to be developing an interfaith social justice manual. This manual is going to contain all of the contents of every single call, but it's also going to have additional resources, best practices, and organized activities that will help each of you start doing the work that you want to do on the ground. And putting this all together is going to be hopefully less than 100 pages, because we also don't want to give you something that's going to be overwhelming, but it's going to be something that helps with tuning into whatever subject you're interested in, whatever ideas you might have that might be considered shareable to other communities. And it's giving you all the opportunity to not just take the helm of participating, but also being interactive in the work that needs to be done. So that's kind of the idea of the workshops. Another thing that I want to mention specifically is we actually already have some of the dates of the workshops ready. In February, we're going to be focusing on immigrant justice. We have two amazing CCs, the Interfaith Center at Miami University and Anytown, Las Vegas, who are going to be presenting some of their work and some best practices. The date of that event is February 28th at the same time, 1 p.m. Pacific. So if any of you all can take part in that, we would absolutely love you to be there. The next date is March 19th, and we are going to be focusing on dialogue as justice. So we're going to be focusing on how in many dialogue spaces, there is a way to take this narrative from just being in communication to actually promoting and living out the justice narrative. And a couple of others will be coming up, including a focus on creative justice, which
What
is
time is that?
that will be at 9 a.m. Pacific, which is noon Eastern and 2 p.m. Felipe in Chile, I want to say. Ha, good. And so we have till March right now in terms of those events. The other ones that are going to be coming up will include environmental sustainability, racism and colorism, gender and sexual justice. But then we'll also have a focus on things like creative justice, where we will focus on the importance and the impact of arts. Whether you paint, whether you act, whether you write poetry, and how those things actually impact our work for justice. We'll be having a special session on storytelling, where we're going to be inviting some partners that we've worked with before on being able to help you tell your story as a community member or a CC member in URI, but also how those stories impact the way that we can do the work for justice. Because the better we know these stories, the better we can do the work of justice. And there will be some open options to think about other potential ideas for the kind of work that we want to do for these workshops. So if any ideas come up that you feel like would be a good session for people to host, and you happen to know folks that could help present about it, please connect me with them however you can. Let me know that information. You all have my email, I hope. I mean, you did connect here, so I would hope you do. And we want to make this a good opportunity for us to really be in a good space of going forward. One thing before I open the floor, someone has joined in with the 650 number. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Sahil.
Oh, hi,
Hello?
Runa Reji. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Sahil ji? Sorry, I joined a little late.
No,
I just
no,
remembered.
no.
I think it's a very interesting conversation that's happening. I heard about the environmental justice and racial inequalities that are going to be addressed through art. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Absolutely. So everyone, Runa Reji, do you want to introduce yourself in your CC?
Yes. So basically, I'm a fashion environmentalist, and I actively work with climate change and peace because I find a huge intersection between the two. I work on special projects with the United Nations and the IUCN, and I'm extremely glad to be a part of URI because it definitely helps bridge what is really required in this day and age with art, science, and basically, your thoughts. Yeah. So thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Runa Reji. Appreciate you tuning in. So yeah, now I'd like to really open the floor to just engage in some conversation about what justice in the interfaith movement looks like. All of us are engaged in this work in a lot of different ways. We are storytellers, we're healers, we're activists and community organizers, we are artists and economists and political scientists. All of us come into this space with some intent to do interfaith work. And I'm very curious about where your thoughts are right now about the movement and the role that we can play. So that's kind of the overarching theme that I want to set up for everyone. There's no intent of taking this conversation anywhere except wherever you want to take it. So I'm going to open the floor now. If anyone would like to share any up, and of course, Artie, please.
All right. Tell me which the first one is on February 28th. What's the name of that one?
That's immigrant justice.
Say it again.
Immigrant justice.
Okay. I can tell that a lot of people are deep in thought because you really threw a lot out there.
Sure.
Okay.
Mhm.
And as we all take a deep breath, there's just so much. And for me, I'm a healer. That's why I'm here. And know that as we go through this, the answers will come and we'll work it out, and know that I'm with you all.
Yes, Felipe.
So I had I have a quick question that I guess it can start the conversation is how can we define what is justice in the interfaith movement? Because just like there are different opinions and different life experiences, there's also different ideas of what justice looks like.
Yeah.
And so for me, justice looks very much like equality and equity for all, while there's very many people in conservative religions that are part of the interfaith movement that don't believe that, especially white American evangelical religions, you know what I mean? And so when we want to be the most inclusive movement that can be in the world, as far as like trying to join voices and fight for what's right. But when parts of our interfaith core don't share the same idea of what justice is, I am confused at how to proceed and how to keep this movement united.
Mhm.
So I don't know if anybody would like to like add something to it or if they have any insights about it, because it's a good one.
I know for me, I can only help the people that want to be helped. I realize we're trying to do this for everyone. We can do the best we can do. Now, does it all have to be black and white? Sometimes when we have the dialogue with those and we keep our center, sometimes we're planting a seed. We're not harvesting the tree. So this has been a systemic challenge. I'm not going to call it a problem. It's a challenge, okay, since forever. And you're absolutely right, Felipe. All right. But this is not a whim bam slappy ma'am. Thank you. I'm done. We're through and we're perfect. This is a process of healing for all communities. The white supremacist, the white privilege, okay, it's actually a thing that's true for all of us. And so as we stumble through this, we can still walk side by side. So it's not like we're going to solve it and this is it. Now, does that sound reasonable?
I would love to get more opinions because I personally don't
I
think it's
understand.
quite reasonable.
Okay. Okay. And that's okay, but we can still talk about it.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I just don't see how can we walk side by side with someone that would be, you know, for example, against reuniting families that have been split at the border.
Oh, and I agree.
Or people that like are very much like pro wall and pro, you know, boundaries and things like that, when truly that nationalism is what's blinding us from being truly united as world, as humanity. And so no, I find it quite hard to understand how can I walk side by side with that person, because that person's not going to support the thought of justice that I have.
Yeah,
And
but
so yeah, I mean, I won't treat them horrible because I'm a good human being, and I will try to like comfort them and tell them, you know, like you know, I'm here because I am part of a marginalized community. I experience those things, so I just, yeah, no, I don't see how that could work in the work of justice.
Krishna, Katie, Vasu, Runareji, if anyone wanted to share something. Yes, Katie.
Oh, we've been having these conversations at Oracle as well. For me, you know, justice especially is about bringing people to the table who haven't been given a seat or who haven't been not just a seat, but you know, a voice at the table. It's one thing to say, you know, oh, you're sitting here. It's another thing to actually, you know, make them part of, you know, part of it and invested and given the room to build and speak. But we how do you balance, you know, meeting the needs of those people who need to come to the table, you know, because they deserve to be at the table, and those who wouldn't, you know, who believe in walls, and and you can't reach those people with facts, you know, you have to, it's like individual relationships are the only way to get through to those people. So I mean, these are the kind of conversations we've been having at Oracle, especially, you know, and we tend to take the focus that we want to put our efforts into the people who do want to work with us, and not necessarily, you know, trying to reach the people who don't. I mean, we are going to do a class later this year on help, like if attendees of the class want to learn how to help their friends out of conspiracies and so forth, that, you know, or you know, on the right. But as an organization, we focus on justice, and we focus on throwing our energy into people who are also throwing in energy. So.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's some really important work, I think, with what became telling after what happened on January 6th. Um, I I got a lot of international response from some friends and colleagues who told me, you know, we've seen revolutions happen before, but we've never really seen a revolution happen based on a lie. And we don't know how to deal with the situation because there are very big incongruencies in our governance. We know this. There are problems that need to be fixed. But to choose the one thing that actually was not necessarily the problem to be the reason why you cause an insurrection is a cause for alarm and deep confusion. For what is supposed to be considered, you know, the city on the shining hill, quote unquote. And I think, Felipe, to your point, I'm totally there with you. I don't know how comfortable I am in engaging with people who are entering a space where they are mainly motivated by fear, by hatred, by ignorance, and by those things that are not at the center of what we do at URI. Because URI is about acceptance, inclusion, compassion, and healing. And those values run very counter. And I don't think we are going to attract many people who are the antithesis of what we are. And I think this is where I think the idea of radical inclusion should be explored a little more, because at the end of the day, we're not trying to be all inclusive. This is not, we're not trying to put discounts at a resort or a theme park. What we're doing is creating a very transformational movement and changing the world. And there are going to be people that look at us who are just completely not interested. But if I think what Artie is saying is, I don't think we're trying to reconcile in the way where we're walking with them harboring those emotions. Our healing processes are helping us to make them lift all of those things off of them. The anger, the anguish, the shared concern, the ignorance, the fear, all of those things that are displacing them internally, to look at us and saying that we are enemies, that we are supposedly against them and them being able to achieve their livelihood. I think it's the invitation to lift that off of them and help them realize something is hanging over them that they don't deserve to experience. And I know that that's hard. That sucks. It is a stupid thing that we have to keep doing. But unfortunately, that is sort of the situation we've entered. And it is not incumbent upon anyone to have to do that work like all the time, constantly, just because you are a part of the impacted communities that have faced this oppression, that have faced this injustice. It has to take the effort of those who are privileged, who are in places of power, who are the leaders already and the change makers, to say, we need to take bigger steps than we've already been taking. That's where the revolutionary part actually should come in. Rather than being radically inclusive, we should be radically just.
That was good. Thanks.
I'm so glad I recorded that.
Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, for sure. And I can see that.
I really like your take on what I said, because I'm going, thank you.
Yeah, because I as a regional coordinator, I'm understanding the complexity of what interfaith is, because I see the value of all of it. There has to be dialogue. There has to be narratives and messages of world peace. There has to be people in dialogue, and there has to be people building relationships.
Yeah.
But that's not the end all be all. That should have never been the end all be all.
Right.
And a lot of people actually have a sense that it is, because they walk into a space looking at the idea of unity and oneness as being a veil that once you lift it off, everything is solved. But that's a very simplistic way of looking at it, unfortunately, because when you take away the nuance of diversity, the nuance of individualistic identity, you don't allow the person to be their entire selves in a space of oneness. And we're trying to build the bridge to better like fill the gap between those things. If we're interconnected as people, we can only understand that when we know what different pieces need to be connected to be interconnected. It's not a melting pot, it's not a salad, it's literally a mosaic. The mosaic is built by millions of small pieces, but you need to know what those small pieces are to really acknowledge what the mosaic is.
Beautiful.
I need to stop talking though, because this is more about you sharing than me, so I'll be quiet.
No, I mean that's great, and I think it's just like giving us all insights about how to take on this like sort of challenge that we're seeing in this movement.
Right. And as a part of that question that you're asking, Felipe, about what does justice mean, that means we have a cap on inclusion for sure. It's not a cap we've necessarily created. It's a cap that's like very clear based on the value base that we've created as an organization, as CCs, and as people who are doing grassroots work. We know what we're doing. If people don't agree with us, they don't have to. We can't force them or coerce them to do anything. But there is a way to plant a seed to be able to change them.
Yeah.
How do we plant that seed is totally up to people in this room. Some of it can be very direct and can almost be retaliatory, which I often like engage with myself sometimes because the frustration is just overwhelming. You just can't stand it. Like, what are you supposed to do? It's like, we have discussed this a million times. That is not true. And sometimes you have to just be like, you have to just take your own ego and your own emotions and kind of set them aside for a minute and be like, I know what it means to be stubborn too. And we're entering this conversation with the stubbornness of our position rather than the clarity of what a universal truth is or what a fact is. And instead replace it with added opinion, added emotion, added nuance. And I think that's where we need to really dig deeper when it comes to doing that kind of work. How do we get a truth across without making it seem like, oh, it's not just my truth because I said it, or it's your truth because you said it? Because there are individual truths, there are collective truths, there are universal truths, and then there are facts, which don't necessarily have to do with the concept of that kind of truth. So it's just a lot to develop and really like shape and mold into like the context that we have to address when we're going into these spaces. And particularly on the political front, that's a different monster in itself, which we have to address in interfaith. Unfortunately, being in the interfaith movement, super political. It is so political. As much as we don't like to think it is, we are making a statement by saying we are engaging in love and compassion and healing for everyone. That is a very political statement because a lot of people don't think that. And we have to exuberate the courage that says that is our statement, that is our stand. And there's no reason for us to back off from it.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's a very or almost like eye-opening statement to say, you know, interfaith or compassion is radical all by itself. Leaves you thinking for sure.
Yeah, it actually makes me think of the story of some of the Sikh gurus who, you know, were known to be that, you know, radically compassionate and courageous. During times of war, some of the gurus who would just go on the battlefield were not there to fight. They gave all of the soldiers water on both sides. They would actually go and just make sure that people are fed and given water and they're prayed for. And people like think of that notion now and you're like, how in the world would someone think that that's a good thing to do? But the seed that was being planted by someone who was just offering you water or someone that's offering you food or a kind word or a prayer became something that made them realize, why am I engaging in violence over something that like I have no power in at the end of the day? I gain nothing from this. There's only loss for me all around. These were people who died for the right of others to practice their faith, not even their own. These were people who died because justice had to be the mandate, because it is something that was not just like apparent or obvious, it had to be achieved because tyranny was the norm. So you had to go out of your way to make sure courage was the norm rather than audacity. And a lot of those narratives, I think, get very subdued in a space of talking about something that might be considered controversial or political or misunderstood, because people don't understand that we're engaging in a legacy much older of this kind of radical compassion, of this kind of radical inclusion or love or whatever you want to call it, that's older than civilization itself. That is tradition. In my faith traditions and the spiritual followings of everyone in this room, there's a tradition of that somewhere, somehow. And I think we have to invite people to really like think about that, and that it invites us not to use peace as a passive term, but as a very active one. Very active one. Oh, I'm winded. I'm gonna let other people talk.
That was great though. One of the books that I really like is The Evolution of God by Robert Wright. And he talks about how what we call social circle of inclusion has been growing and growing and growing. And so all of the faith traditions do call us to see others as our brother and to care for them and extend compassion to them. And as humanity and society have grown, that circle of consideration and inclusion, you know, we're getting more globalized. So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And sure, there are people who aren't keeping up, you know, in the sense that they think it's okay to put people in cages. But on the grand scale, generally humanity is growing more peaceful, more compassionate, you know, and we can just tap into that. And thinking about the balancing both the disenfranchised and those who we might blame for that, you know, but maybe they're being misled in a way too. If we see everyone, you know, that this is where, yes, we need that veil where we see oneness, and we also recognize that they all have their own needs. So if I recognize and love everyone, I see their value and what they need, and that's meeting them where, you know, what they need, I think is a big part of it. So this group might need, racial justice, as we're going to go into, and this group is going to need economic, justice. And sorry, it made more sense in my head. But, yeah.
No, but I think you're in the right track, so it's sort of like once again figuring out what the common ground is, so maybe these people are very much against immigration policy, but they do care about, I don't know, I mean, sounds very far-fetched, but like they care about anti-capitalism, for example. And so maybe meet them on that point instead of talking about immigration. That requires a lot of maturity though, and a lot of like patience. Like, I mean, yeah. And I think that's like personal work, right?
Yes. I know my daughter, when we talked about the verbiage that the people coming up the border were criminals, and we reminded our daughter that the person that they depend upon to help them with their ranch is an undocumented helper. And we said, is he a criminal? And they said, oh, I think we need new language. Okay. So the thing is that there's tiny things we can do. For me, working on me has been paramount since I joined URI. Coming to know different religions. When I told people that I was a Reiki master, and they tried to talk me out of it. My base is Christian, but I have a little bit of a lot of the different religions as I learned them. I mean, I've just included them because I even had a young man laughed at me. He says, I didn't think Christians believed in reincarnation. And because they do. And I just looked at him and I said, well, that's just been my experience. I don't go and tell people that, but hey, this is called experience. When we are open to other things, then we can make those decisions for ourselves. So this is, like you talked, Felipe, the individual. When I look at this, there's a lot of work to be done, and I can do it little by little, and I will.
And
I know.
Artie, that's the exact point that we're trying to address with this series of workshops. We all have so much work to do, but we can only do it little by little. If we know how to do it better, more efficiently, and more collectively with others who are, essentially on the same page with us, we can actually get a lot done.
There's the catch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And in talking to people, sometimes like the simplest thing that we can do to help them, then we grow too. All right. And this is, yes, immigration, yes, it's a challenge. Okay. But the perceptions are what we're trying to heal each person. And the more that I work on me and interact with other people, it can be the simple thing of, giving food or clothes or a hug. Now I want you to know I'm a hugger. Okay. This has been very stressful for me because I can't do it. Okay. But to recognize them, to see them in the eye, and to know, and to help them know, and do what we can. And it can be as small as a smile and a recognition of the validity of that person. I mean, you know, we always think of this huge, big thing, but the kind of thing we want is deeper than that. And so as we bring in the people that want to do this, then we will create new ideas. And it's not that we're going to go out and say, this is how it has to be. But as we learn and as we talk, then we can make a difference.
Mhm.
So I'm interested, very much so. Glad to be a part of this group.
Thank you, Artie. Really, really appreciate you and your ability to always remind us to be centered about why healing the world means healing us and why healing us means healing the world.
Yeah.
It's always connected. And we have a friend who has just joined us, Samira. Welcome. If you'd like to introduce yourself and share why you're here so late at night.
Hello, everyone. I'm so sorry to interrupt and to be late. I messed up the time. My name is Samira. I am the regional coordinator for multi-region. I am from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I live in Sarajevo. And I really wanted to be here to see what sort of plans exist in North America, because I strongly believe in partnership. So anything that we can do together makes the most sense, I think. So I'm happy to be here. And for me, it's 10 to 11 p.m. So it's very late, but I'm a night owl, so that's not a problem at all. But yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. And Audrey, I do agree with what you were saying. Everything starts from within. The internal healing needs to start, and then everything outside can sort of continue. So thank you for sharing.
Samira, I have it's RD.
RD, yes, thank you. Thank you.
And you look amazing for this late at night.
Thank you. Thank you. I do appreciate that.
I'm going, really? 11 o'clock at night? Oh my God. I like being around young people.
So not to put you on the spot, Samira, but just to sort of loop you into the conversation we're having right now. Felipe asked sort of a central question of the conversation we're having right now, which is how do we or how can we define justice in the interfaith movement? Because justice is a very open-ended, very contextual, very like inclusive term in a lot of ways, because justice can mean different things to different people. So we've been sharing a lot about this idea that when we're talking about, you know, trying to engage in the interfaith movement, like not everyone is on the same page about what justice looks like for us in the movement, because some people come into this with equity and justice for all and peace and healing for all, and some people are like, well, that depends. And how do we not necessarily even reconcile those differences, but how do we look at this as a space where we're being intentional about our commitment to, you know, creating a better world? And what does it look like when we're actually aiming for an interconnected justice, where justice is going to ripple throughout the world, whoever we want it to affect, because that should be the inherent nature of justice.
Well, thank you for explaining the the conversation starter of this group. If not everyone shared, I would like to listen in first and then sort of give my feedback on it.
Absolutely.
But that's Felipe. Thank you for starting that. Yeah, I do have my thoughts, but I would like to hear more from others before I do share.
Sure,
Thanks.
sure. Totally. And that'll buy you some time also. So that's my bad. Vasu and Runareji, any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Runareji.
Yeah. So I think the conversation is really interesting. there are a few things that come to my mind, and this is something which I keep discussing, which I think is probably one of the root reasons and how we can probably move ahead. How do we change the mindset of a supremacist, basically? And second thing is, when we're talking about peace, and if we're going to be talking about healing and everything, which is great, but you know, you always have the haves and the have-nots and the marginalized communities and the supremacists. Everyone is looking for their own reward at the end of it. And even if you look at it, even governments are playing along with this, where they use religion to be the ploy to get things done. And it's very simple. You just have to convince the people in the country that you're being attacked. And it always works, you know. So how are we going to change that? And I think the way the group is going is fantastic. So we could probably think of brainstorming certain ideas, like really flash brainstorming, so we can put them down. It might not, some of them could be really silly, but that's fine. It's just brainstorming. And I think we could come to a pool of ideas and definitely come to a direction as to how we could move ahead for peace. And I love what you said, Tahil, that it has to be, what was the word that you said? You said peace shouldn't be passive. It has to be active, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So these are my thoughts. But for me, I'm still kind of, I do not have the answers, and I don't expect myself to have the answers yet, because I'm still learning and I'm still discovering. So I'm sure we will all come to the answers, and it's probably through people like you guys who've already been in this realm, where we can have a lot more discussions and see how we can move forward. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Runariji, I really appreciate that point. I think all of us still have to remember that no one has the answer to any of these big problems. We wish we would be Nobel laureates if we did. And even they don't have all of the answers to everything that's going on. I think that's kind of the constant approach to how the interfaith movement looks for justice. We're lifelong learners. So we have to make sure that we're approaching the idea of doing justice for others as contextually as humanly possible, which means there can never be a blanket solution to how everything is fixed. And I think that's why there's a precedent in often what we consider as important to do this work, as making sure that we know what the core ideas, the best practices are, in trying to make sure we can take something that is shared in our community back to where we go in our communities, to say that we can start here and see what's available to us and start building it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah, we can't approach this with a panacea. There's no fix-all. I wish there was. I would dedicate my whole life to find one. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
Samira?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, that's why a lot of global initiatives fail, because they think that one solution fits all. A lot of UN initiatives fail, such as SDGs, which are, I would say, very sophisticated and they're structured, but when it comes to the implementation, like, they're failing, to be honest. Like 2030 agenda, not going to happen. Why? Because it's one solution fits all. So that's like just an addition to what you were saying. And as I was listening, one of the core, so I'm coming from a post-conflict community. So we had 4-year-old war, a bloodshed, 3 sides. You don't know who's guilty, who's innocent, what happened. We still don't have all the facts. And our problem, and what I've experienced in my global work as well, is that we are wrong in our definition of peace itself. So what is a peaceful society? I am a fan of Johann Galtung, and I appreciate his definition of positive peace a lot. because it tells us more about what are the standards for a society to live in peace. And that's why I'm always putting out a very bold statement when speaking about the condition of peace and justice in the world, is that no society on the face of this world is peaceful. Why? Because there's discrimination somewhere in the world, there's war in the other part of the world, there is political turmoil in another part of the world. So it's never completely peaceful. What we need to come in terms with is that we have a problem in different communities, starting from different rates, and then having different steps in dealing with it, and then being able to proceed from that point onwards. It cannot be one solution fits all. It cannot be us telling people sort of this is what peace means to you, or this is how you need to do things, which is unfortunately happening a lot. Even within URI, there's certain like standards that exist, like you should do it this way. And this is why I think the URI has existed for this long and it has some results, is that it's not one solution fits all. The way interfaith peace building is being done in my region is different than what is being done in North America and then what is being done in Europe. And that's, and according to my beliefs and my sort of experience in peace building, that's the right way to approach it. So yeah, I just wanted to add these to the conversation. And yes, and there needs to be synergy. So even though we're doing these incredible things all over the globe, we still need to have like a system of higher values that connect all of us. Because if we start and we don't have like a finite goal or what we want to accomplish at the end, we're not going to get as far as we would like to. So that's why strategic planning in our local communities and in our global communities, such as you are, is so important. That's why these sort of gatherings, Sahil, are so important. And from our work as regional coordinators, we do know how important it is to listen to our communities and what they need and what we need to address. And so if there were 100,000 more organizations such as URI, it still wouldn't be enough. Because no matter how much we want to believe that everyone wants what we're sort of preaching and what we want, that's not it, unfortunately. We have much more resistance than we have sort of support and alliance with people and people wanting to be our accomplices. So yeah, starting from the definition of peace and yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I hope that it means something to you.
I pray that I can be as eloquent as you at 11 o'clock at night. I begin to like shut down by the time it's 9:30. And I appreciate, I think, just the entire honesty that I think comes with doing this work globally as an organization, let alone how we're addressing it regionally as well. We have partners all over the world that are engaged in this. We don't want to feel like a sense of loneliness or an inability to do things because we seem so minuscule. In a network of over 1,000 CCs, we know that this work is very possible. It's just exactly as you're saying, making sure we reach a point of synergy that says we can depend on others to also look at this as something that can be pursued. It's actually achievable rather than something that we eternally aspire to years and centuries ahead of time. Because that can really put us in a place of building castles in the sky, as I like to say, like without any bricks in your hand. Like you can't build something that you don't know how to build. You can't build it if you don't have the resources to build it. You can imagine it all you want, but it's not going to be there literally. And each of us serve, I think, as those bricks and those tools and the foundations for which we can make that possible.
And we can start small.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,
exactly.
we're not trying to do an override of everyone, but with each person working at their level, we can make the difference.
Absolutely. And it's a lot about including those who do not agree with us, because It's easy to be in our own echo chambers where everyone thinks like we do, where everyone feels like we do, behaves like we do, but there is a certain sort of risk factor that plays into the change, which is going outside of your comfort zone. I've been surrounded with a lot of people that keep telling me that peace building work and interfaith work are beautiful. And then I honestly don't know what to say, because for me, it has been stressful, painful, nerve-wracking, and a bunch of very negative emotions attached to it. And this is because of like the situation I was born in. I had to step outside of my comfort zone and have a conversation with someone who not just believes in something opposite, but is not from the same universe, I feel. So, yeah, I feel that the entire world population can be separated into like 3 big groups. So the one group, which tends to be the smallest, are the people that agree with you. Then on the opposite side are those who disagree with you, and they have, I don't know, 40%. And then there's the middle ground where people still don't know where they stand. A lot of the interfaith, I feel, and peace building efforts are being done with those who actually agree with us. And a lot of energy, a lot of funding goes into that court. But I feel that the biggest opportunity for us as a movement, as a community, as this place that wants change in the world, is this middle ground where people still didn't make their mind. It's challenging to work with them. It takes a lot of like to persuade them and to tell them like this is what's happening, and like you need to be on the right side of history. But I feel that we're missing that point. And when speaking about interconnected justice, are we preaching to the choir, like in what we do already? Like, how do we get to the middle ground? And God forbid, if we try to reach to the other side of the spectrum, like how will the conversation look like? So I think that the future of the interfaith movement and the peace building work that we're doing will be focusing on the middle ground and on the opposite. Because we already have our allies, we already have our accomplices. What are we doing with these other 2 groups? How are we engaging in dialogue? And I keep telling Tahil about different situations where we need a dialogue and that did not happen. So it's, yeah, I was just thinking about like, how do we reach out to these other groups that are not with us, not here?
And it may not be their time. So it's just like my daughter all of a sudden seeing a different point of view. I mean, when we offer sustenance to somebody that is in dire need, and it's just from us, it's not because we're in a big thing going on, for the betterment of the world, but because that person needs something. Okay. On the ground, making a difference in another person's life, and just even recognizing them. I want to know what you think. I told a man, I said to him, beautiful man, he was a black man, grocery store. And I said, when you think of the color yellow, do you know for sure if it's the same color yellow as I'm thinking? And when you tell me what your color yellow looks like, you enrich me. You. And you should have seen the look on his face. Oh, people, even these people that don't seem to have the recognition, it may be in the back of their mind. It may have been repressed before, but you asked the right question. I asked the right question. I offer unconditional love, and it may trigger them, but maybe not that day, maybe another day. All I can do is drop my seeds along the way, and it makes the difference. Do I need to have credit for it? No. Because I'm doing what I call my God job. And you have a challenge. The biggest challenge is that you're in a position of power. Ask the questions because they need you in your heart. They need me in my heart. Because when we speak heart to heart, it can be just the simplest thing. If we make it too complicated, we get the mental process. And quite frankly, it can lead us astray.
Mhm. Mhm.
Does that make sense to you? It's been a delight to meet you.
Mm.
My CC is actually part of the multi-region. And when I came on to the Leadership Council, I knew that the bandwidth that I have, I can send the healing energy to everyone in the world, but I focus on the North America region because that's where I was led to. But I still got your back.
I know. Thank you so much. I think that regions are just there to help us with the administrative work of URI. There's only one URI that exists. And so regions are there just to facilitate the cooperation on more of a local level. But we
Well,
strive
yeah.
to same purpose and principles. So
Well,
you're
I'll
with
tell you.
North America, so you're with URI. I know as well.
Well, I'll tell you, it has changed since 98 when I came on board. It has changed. And yes, we've grown, but I had people, I just love all of them because they share with me, what they have, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled. And so let's bring the thrill.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because every one of us, when we engage this part of ourselves, it makes the difference. So we have an incredible thing going on, and I will do my plans that I have.
Thank you, Artie. Thank you for your masterminding. I don't know what it entirely is, but I'm going to look forward to it.
Okay.
And that's helping me actually now shift into, I think, living out the point or process that I want to do for all of these workshops. A lot of what we're going to be engaging in is you all hearing the stories of CCs and leaders doing this work. But now we want to get into the tangible of how do we do it and how do we best serve people who are going to be joining us. So these next 15-20 minutes, I want to hear more about the ways in which you feel it would be most helpful to have these kinds of workshops be hosted and be available to folks that want to be able to engage with them. One of the best examples that I didn't even need to encourage was something that Vasu mentioned in the chat about being inclusive by make sure there's accessibility by language.
Mm-hmm.
That is super important. And that's been an ongoing conversation for all of URI when trying to make sure we can engage people that don't just speak the privilege of English. Making sure this work is accessible to others is super important. And Vasu, I totally am with Samira in sharing gratitude with you because you always show up to translate somewhere, somehow. And that is a level of commitment that is, worth applauding because you help tune in folks from Latin America all the time to make sure they know that these kinds of conversations are happening and these are their conversations to be a part of. And that's the most important thing. So I'm definitely adding some way to make sure that this stuff is accessible in different languages, not just the videos themselves potentially with subtitles, but also creating maybe translated versions of the manual that will come out as a result of these workshops. And Samira, I don't know if I shared that with you, but that's one thing that's coming out of this workshop series. So I want to hear people's thoughts about what would be most helpful for them when they take these workshops, or when they share information about these workshops that will help them bring others in, that will actually be supportive rather than something that's just like, oh, it's a monthly conversation and we're done. So I'm looking for any pieces of advice or suggestions that you think would be helpful.
I think something that will apply some sort of like experience learning. So some sort of activity or commitment, or maybe, honestly, I mean, experiment sounds pretty descriptive on what I'm trying to say, you know, like try something that something that we come up with in this conversations. Maybe at the end of the conversation was like, okay, well, we all commit to do something about the specific topic that we're discussing, right? And see how that helps us to grow in that specific topic that we're addressing on that conversation, you know, so like race or racial, or, you know, gender equity or whatever it is, or environmental justice or whatever, and see how by using that experiment we can create more, we can either have more knowledge or bring other people into this conversation and, you know, grow more in that sense. So I think practicality would be a recommendation for me, something that we can take and do after this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Same wavelength. That's totally something that I wanted to make sure that every single one of these workshops has, because it's not going to be enough to just talk about these things. We know that. We've said that time and time again on this call alone. I want people to leave wanting to come back, but also engaging in something a step further than they were at before they entered the conversation. And that's something that we in North America as a region, at URI, and all of us personally are always looking to commit to. It's, we want to do this work better. How do we do it better? Some people will be at different steps in learning about how to do it better, but as long as we create a space where people can actually be trained and to learn how to do it, only then will they be able to pursue it with some confidence and support from people that they're outside of usually. Sorry, that sentence didn't come out the way I wanted it to. Any other thoughts?
So Tahel, could you just help me understand better? Is there any benefit, like, for people that potentially decide to be there for all of these workshops? Do you have intention of like keeping the same group, the core group, and then people can jump in and jump out if they need, when they can?
I think it's a both and, right? I would love to have a core group of people that participates in every single one. That would be fantastic. But I know that there's some topics that some people are interested in more than others.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a flow and like um, an escalation and de-escalation of numbers based on that. People might be more interested in storytelling rather than immigration or vice versa. So if I attract a certain number of people that might be interested in those things, that might change the trajectory of, the effectiveness of the space. But I know that even if there's some consistency of people, even if it's a few, that also does make a difference too, because they're willing to commit to be a part of the process. I don't know if there's something that I can offer alternatively to make it seem different otherwise, but I think what's crucial about doing this workshop series is, making sure that people share the word. We need folks to participate more, not just because we want numbers in the room, but because we're engaging something where we want to hear from people. We want to make sure that things, I think exactly as Felipe said, adjust and adapt to those needs. that they're not going to look the same every single time. It's not, okay, 1 hour conversation and then 30 minutes questions and then this thing is over. It's not gonna, it shouldn't look like that because they're all different issues too. Some may need a video for people to see things happen. Some people may need to see things in practice before they actually commit to it themselves. Some people may need a checklist of things to do. Some people may need an activity that makes sure that they can know what they're doing right and what they can work on. And that's going to shift for sure. And I think that I hope that that appeal makes a difference in the way that people understand why the series is important and why they're invited to one session or every session. It's completely open to them.
Yeah, thanks for adding that. I was thinking about, yeah, my thought ran away from me. Sorry, late at
That's
night. So one of the things that it might be good to do is to sort of offer people sort of a slot on the URI blog to offer their thoughts and like the process of contemplation of the knowledge that they got through the workshop and the trainings. And for this to be sort of a feedback to what we initially talked during the workshop. And there is one sort of evaluation technique that I like to use. Even it can be used as an exercise. It doesn't have to be just a way of like checking the progress. It's called the most significant change. Whereas through following the story of a participant from the beginning of a workshop, if it's an extensive training for a few years even, it's easier to do it. But to sort of try to measure the initial stage of someone being on the workshop and then maybe through a blog that will come out after to see the most significant change that happened with the individual or a group of CC after being there. And that's sort of a visible change, which is easier to like witness and track and sort of go back and reflect on it. So it might be good for like the groups. It's voluntarily, of course. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to, but just for it to be as an option. So what has been your end result after this? Did you come as a group and talk about the racial divide all around the world, about sexism, ageism, all other isms that are not good, and everything else? So this might be good because, as you know, in multi-region, I've been thinking about doing a few trainings myself and all of it. And I thought that the best sort of way to hear back from people is for them to tell me how they felt. Did it change them? Did it influence them to do something better? To come again? Will they invite someone? So these are all the factors that can change from them being there. So this is my contribution to your question, Tahil.
And I'd like to add something to that. In the early parts of URI, they would go to some different countries and they would do incredible work on, people on the ground, meeting people on the ground. Now, what we're trying to do is also be able to bring it forward. What they then found out is they went back to these people and they said, well, how did it impact you? And the people on the ground that were two very different groups that got together, they were still together. And those people on the ground doing the work didn't even know what they had done. They had met with people, they had combined with people, and they were now friends with the people that had been enemies. And they didn't recognize it. So even the little steps, we can get big, but this isn't about big. This is about each one of us making a difference and having other people get fired up about it. This is an exciting process. And let us remember, like you're saying, to call attention to the successes, the little things. The little things. Does that make sense?
Yes, and this is why I take notes along with making sure that this call is recorded. One actually thing that I'm thinking of as I'm speaking to you all is, tapping into the point that I'm a regional coordinator for North America, and Samira, I think you and I can talk a little bit more about this when we're doing our work going forward. Is I think to just remind people of what they have at their disposal, because they are tapping into the URI space. If something comes up out of these workshops that tells them that they actually want to do something, that they have a regional coordinator that can walk them and support them in their process of doing a project related to one of the justice themes. If they want to organize a socially distant demonstration against something that's being done in ICE or CBP, or if it is a community that wants to focus on better storytelling to help humanize more refugees and asylum seekers, or whatever the event or the idea looks like, that they have a support in me and the leadership council in the region to help them do that. That once the workshops are over, they've gained a network of people they can work with. They haven't just gained the experience of the workshop. Like, yes, Samir.
Just to add something,
Yeah.
these workshops and any kind of community building efforts that we have in URI are wonderful occasions to offer some orientation to our CCs, because there's so many different options in URI, and there's so little that we know and that we have been able to experience because it's so huge and it keeps changing and it's all over the place. It's crazy. And it's wonderful that after each of these training sessions and workshops, that we highlight what are the possibilities of cooperation through URI, and what can URI do in all of these specific fields of interconnected justice. Like, no matter what topic there is a field in URI that deals with that. There is a PPP that is related to that. So it might be good to include a segment in each of these about how does URI suggest that we approach this, and what is URI doing currently to address this. This is something that Lauren talks about related to the environmental issues. So, and I think that she's been good in terms of sort of letting people know of what is already happening in all of it. So yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's 100% of what needs to be addressed in some of these spaces, because the intent of creating these workshops also is to uplift the work of CCs. There's CCs that are already experts at basically every single one of the topics that we're going to have. And who better to talk about that work, to break it down in a way that people understand, than your fellow CC members who are doing the work. If you have a comfort and a confidence, or a lack of confidence, that you don't know how to do this work and you don't know how easy it is to do this work, even if it's small, you can turn and say, oh my gosh, that CC has been doing it this whole time and I didn't realize. Why don't I reach out to them to see what I can do? Or why don't we partner on something to really make this work expand exponentially? That's exactly the point. So I will serve as more of a hands-off kind of moderator in the way that these workshops will happen. The center of these conversations falls on the CCs presenting about their work and presenting about how to do this work. And that's what's the biggest priority for me.
I think that this is an initial spark, and then it's up to the people who are there to take it on as they please.
Right.
And we need to make sure that they know that they can do that.
Yes.
I mean, we had this incredible URI happening in the United States. When we had our gathering not too long ago, the people in the San Francisco areas, how come we didn't know about it? because all of the information was going out to all of the different regions, but not into the North America region. It was only with the establishment of the North America region that we began to have the kind of coverage that other parts of the world had. And we, you know, quite frankly, we were deep in it. I was going to say shit, but I decided not to. Didn't work.
I'll make sure to bleep that when I.
Oh, S star star star.
Yes, exactly. No, absolutely, Artie. That's exactly right. If we're doing the work of, you know, highlighting, prioritizing, and supporting our CCs, we have to make it very clear across the board. And we want to make this a reminder of this is where your engagement starts. It's not where it continues. We're engaging in a brand new, robust, and powerful way. And we want to remind you that you have a community of people behind you ready to help you do that work.
I'll tell you, it's huge. It is absolutely huge, because when I've talked to people, I don't know I can do that. Gee, you know, and I'm going, So, because there's a lot of people that are duplicating each other and they can learn from one another.
Right. Absolutely. Well, we are reaching the last couple of minutes on this call. So I just want to, you know, first and foremost, share my gratitude for those of you that could make it. Obviously, we have commitments, we have opportunities, and you gave me the privilege of seeing your face on a Sunday.
Yay!
So just gonna always share some thanks for that, especially those of you who are up super late, Samira. But secondly, I just want to open the floor to, you know, any last thoughts or remarks or suggestions that, you know, I should keep in mind in working with others to make sure that we can achieve as much success as possible in doing these workshops.
You've mentioned that, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Kathy. I just want to say thank you for the inclusion of the language, for the commitment. And I would like to offer, to propose that we can have the opportunity for listen people that don't speak English, because we can see other faces of the social justice, how the people live the social justice in other places. And just I would like to offer my support for people that Spanish speakers. And yeah, I love the idea of the inclusion of our language. And thank you very much, Tahir, Samira, everyone for making it possible.
Thank you.
And actually, Vasu, I don't know if this idea might be appealing. What if we had a specific Spanish dialogue, exactly like the one we had today, where English speakers tune in and listen to what you all have to say?
It's a good idea, yeah. Because because it's common that the people that don't speak English listen, but we can create other opportunities to learn to listen.
Okay.
As long as you have English translation.
Yes. Without a question. Without a question.
I learned German. What can I say?
Yeah, I think that is a fantastic idea, and I think I will definitely tap that onto the list of ones that are already going on. So we'll keep the ones that are happening in English, and we'll create a special one, I think, for the Spanish speaking community, for English speakers to tune in for once.
Yeah.
That's great. Katie.
Yes, I was going to ask, you mentioned that these calls will be posted on YouTube, but is there a way that the video could be posted somewhere with like resource, you know, like so people could come back and stay engaged and stay in touch about, you know, like the action items, or
That is a very good question. So what I'm thinking of doing, and I think this will inform part of my process of how I follow up with folks. What I'm gonna do is email you all tomorrow, basically with a follow-up of the conversations that we have. I'll email you the video URL to this meeting. I will email you the page or two of notes that I took. And I will create a section where people can contribute their thoughts and resources on that section of notes, so that way we have a common space to share things that we can all contribute to, rather than just making it a space of, oh, I'm just throwing things at you now and I'll see you next month.
Great, that sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about sharing. It's all about that building of trust and community, and all of the resources that you share are going to be resources that I can actually put in the manual that I'm putting together. So that will be another place that people can go to when they're trying to look for that stuff.
Now, are you also going to put these recordings on our URI? You know,
Website?
yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. Mhm.
So they can go back and restudy them and
Mhm.
Also, Tahil, it might be good for all of us as staff to consider using the website to the most capacity that it has, because there is somewhere a segment of like resources about URI and what URI is
Right.
doing, like the videos and stuff. So it might be worth to have a conversation with Isabel and Gia about like
how to make that happen.
yeah, how to make that happen, how to create it like a library of these things.
Don't
Yeah.
they have that already?
They do, but we can just like upgrade it and like
It
add
has to
new
be
things.
upgraded.
Add
As
new
we grow, it has to be updated.
Yeah, agreed. I totally think that should be something that we do. We'll have to explore that for the regional website too, but I think
Yes.
in speaking to Isabel and Gia, sharing this with the global network is going to be super important as well.
Yeah.
So I'm sign me up, of course. Yes, Felipe.
I was just gonna say I am about to like head out. I don't know if is that happening, or I just don't want to miss it just in case.
We're basically done. We're good to go. No worries. Thank you all so much for this. This was a fantastic first conversation, and I think a good omen for what's to come with the workshop series. So a lot of gratitude to each of you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Raheel. We'll see you later.
Bye. See you,
Thank you
everyone.
very
Bye-bye.
much, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.